Welcome to a new offering from Code Sadhana. In this offering, we'll be working with arrays. When we think about arrays, we think about functions like map, push, pop, join, filter, etc. In this offering, we will be seeing how these functions with arrays work in JavaScript and compare them with BigQuery. So without further ado, let's get started. The map is the most common operation which we do in any array. So for example, if you have an array of 1, 2, 3, and you want to say double the elements of the array in JavaScript, you can basically use the map operator, take each element and double it. So we will wrap it with the console.log and run this. So this basically returns double of each element of the array. Now let us see how we can do the same thing in BigQuery. So the first step is I should declare an array here. So let me declare an array with the name sequences, and I'll declare 1, 2, 3 as the elements of the array. And let's first check how this sequences is appearing. So now when I run this, so we have declared the array. Now for doing the map operation, we basically need to unnudge the array and do a cross join as we have seen in the previous episode. So for doing the unnest and the cross join, we can do select star from sequences s dot numbers x. So this is basically doing the sequence with unnest of numbers. So when you run this, you get individual elements of the array in each row. So what we need to do is we need to multiply them with 2 to get the double. So at this point, you have got a table with each element of the array, which is doubled. Now, all you have to do is we need to convert this into an array. So for that, we have an inbuilt function called array. So we just need to call the inbuilt function. So when you run this, you get another array, which is the double of each element. The array function here takes a subquery as input. The subquery should return exactly one column as its output, and the array function converts the column into an array. Now I can also rewrite this map function in a slightly different way, where I can remove this cross join here, and I can just say from C. So this will also basically return the same output. So here I'm calling the array and passing the subquery directly here and avoiding the cross join here. Now let us look at another common JavaScript array operation, which is a filter. So filter will basically return elements which are matching the condition. So for example, if I write a condition like e greater than or equal to 2, right? So if I write this condition, it will basically return the elements 2 and 3, which is satisfying this condition. Now let us look how we do the same uh, with BigQuery. So I can basically do the same unnest operation. So select X from sequences, comma, numbers as X, where X greater than or equal to 2. So if I do this, it would basically return 2, 3. So it again relies on the cross join with unnest, and we are just applying the condition and forming the table and then converting the table using the array function and filtering the element. Now let us look at the function sum. So suppose you have an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you write equal to 4. So what this means that this will return true if any one of the element in the array is equal to 4. So this is true. But if I say, if I put 41, this would return false. So the sum function is basically returning a Boolean true or false if any one of the elements in the array is meeting the condition. Now let us look at how we will do the same thing with BigQuery. So we will first form the array 4, 5. And so here, what we need to do is we need to count the number of elements which are coming out meeting the condition. And if the count is greater than or equal to 1, then the sum should return true. Otherwise, the sum should return false. So first, let us see how the count star works. So here I am basically checking if any element is matching the condition 4. So here it returns 1. So basically this should return true. And if I am putting 41, this returns 0. So any condition less than or equal to 0 should return false. So for doing that, what we can do is we can basically say select C greater than 0, where from this subquery, where I am just going to alias this count star as C. And now if you run this, you can see that it is returning true. And if I make it 41, it will return false. Now, similar to this sum, we have this function every. So here, every means each element of the array should match this condition. So if I run this equal to 4, it will return false. And suppose if I change this to say e less than or equal to 5, so e less than or equal to 5, every element of the array is matching that condition, so it will return true. Now let us look at how we can do every with BigQuery. So if you remember, like for finding sum, we just had to use the condition c greater than 0. And if every element has to match the condition, we basically need to match the count with the length of the array. For finding the length of any array, we have this function inbuilt called array length. So we can basically do this select array length and pass the numbers. Now you can see that it is basically saying, throwing an error here, saying unrecognized numbers. That is because the from clause is actually only returning a count here, and it doesn't have these field numbers. So what we can do is we can join this with the sequences itself, which will give us the numbers here. So now if I am going to run this, it will return false. Now if I am going to change this condition to say less than or equal to 5 and run the same thing, it will return true. So this is how you can do uh, an every function. Now in JavaScript, when you are using a map, instead of passing an inbuilt lambda, I can also explicitly declare a function like say compute x comma y, which takes two arguments x and y, and return say x plus 4 by y. So basically this function is adding x with 4, dividing it by y, and returning it. Now in the map, I can, instead of calling this, I can explicitly call the compute function and pass the relevant values. So now if I run this, sorry, this should be E here. It is basically adding each element with by 4 and dividing it by 2. Now, how do we do this? The same thing in BigQuery. Two, I can create a function with the create function call. So I call the function compute, which takes two arguments, int and x and int y, and it returns a float as x plus 4 by y. So now we have created the function. Now we can create our array here, select 1, 2, 3 as numbers. Now what we need to do is we would return an array of the elements after mapping the elements through the function. So here we have this function compute from sequences s comma s dot numbers as x. Now if I run this, you can see that we can we went through each element of the array and invoke the compute function, and we return the final output as another array. Now let us look at a very common function in JavaScript, which is basically the join function. So say if you have an array of some elements and you can do join, basically it produces a string after joining each element with the separator you have given here. Now let's see how we can do the join in BigQuery. So in BigQuery we have an inbuilt function called array to string, which basically takes an array as input and a separator as a second input. So we can try to use this function directly here and see what is happening. So array to string numbers, comma, the separator. But when we run this now, it complains saying that array to string argument mismatch because array to string supports only string array or a bytes array. So we can just validate whether it is working with string by converting this array into a string array. And let us run this here again. So we can see that the arrays we have performed the array join with the comma separator. Now if we have just an integer array, how will we use the array string function? For that, what we need to do is we need to convert each element of the array into a string. So we can use the cast function for that. So we can use the map like what we did in the earlier. So we can use map, and for each element we cast it as a string from numbers x from sequences. So when we do this, what we have done is we have basically converted the array of integers into array of string. So now we can try to apply this array to string in this output. So here we array to string, we pass the array and the separator here. Now we will run this. We see that we did a successful join operation. Now the last two which we want to cover today are the push and pop operator. So if I have an array in JavaScript, I can do push and I can print the array here, and then I can do array.pop, and again I will print the array here. Let me remove this last line and run this. So you can see that after the push, one element got added to the end of the array, and after pop, one element got removed. Now let us see how we can do the same function using BigQuery. Now in BigQuery, we have this function called array concat, which basically is taking an array as input, and it can concatenate with another array. So in this example, let us say select numbers, comma, what is the element you want to push? We push it here from sequences. Now if I run this, you can see that we have successfully implemented the push operation. Doing the pop, one approach we can take is we can use the offset, which we learned in the previous episode, and we can eliminate the offset, the last offset from the output. So suppose we have this sequences and we are taking the offsets. Now what we need to do is we need to basically remove this offset 2, which is basically the last element of the array, and select rest of the rows. So here I can basically need to add a condition where O less than array length numbers minus 1. So array length of numbers will return me value of 3 and minus 1 is 2. So basically we are saying that select all elements where offset is less than 2, which is basically these two elements. So now let us try this. So this returns basically 1 and 2, which is what we want. Now all we need to do is we need to convert this into an array. So we can call our array function here and see how it goes. As you can see here, we got the output as 1 and 2 after popping out the last element 3. So this is how you implement the pop function in BigQuery.